Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Yes, there's a lot going on in the world right now, and we will talk about it after we're done with today's lessons because, we'll just talk about it after. If you're interested to hear my thoughts and perspective on everything that's going on in the world, please stay till the end and you will get to have a chance to hear from me. But, okay, where we left off. Joshua, not quite dead yet, but towards the end of his life, he is trying to pass the torch and everything. There's a list of lands that they've conquered, kings they've killed, and also a list of lands they have yet to conquer. And though, yes, we've talked about them fighting with the Canaanites quite a bit, they didn't completely wipe them out because, let's get into Judges 1. Because Judges 1, like I said, they describe the Israelites' conquest, but how they let some people live and didn't destroy every single religious center of the locals there, of the conquest. The people they were conquesting, you know what I mean? And they were stealing their land and whatnot back in this time. Yahweh gave them specific instructions that they were to kill every single human being that was living there and to destroy their religious centers. He gave them specific instructions. Listen, you can't say he didn't warn them. He said, because the people there will become a snare unto you and a trap if you don't. Now, this is before they were but I don't speak for anyone who's there now. I'm just saying this represent a point in time where they weren't totally brainwashed by generation after generation after generation after generation after generation. This was what, the first, or wait, not the first, but the second, maybe third generation from Moses, when they actually, which represents the first generation that was enslaved. Moses and Aaron's generation, they were the first generation that was enslaved. This is Joshua's generation. So they grew up slaves, but technically, you could probably say that they're the first generation of full-blown mental slaves. They are mentally enslaved at this point. Remember, these people had all grown up in the desert under harsh conditions, under harsh restrictions, eating only manna, and only having just enough water to barely survive. And many didn't, actually. Many didn't. And that was one of the biggest problems Moses and Aaron had there at the end, was that they had to watch a lot of people die from either starvation or dehydration in the middle of the desert, because Yahweh was literally just waiting to, who knows what he was waiting for. I think he just loved to feed off the suffering. And he's just a little more suffering, just a little more misery, just a little longer. And Moses and Aaron got mad. They got upset about it, and it cost them their lives. In fact, Yahweh even says it. That was the reason, that they were taken out early, is because he didn't appreciate them questioning his authority. Yahweh did not appreciate that. So anywho, they're long gone. Joshua is an old man at this point. Him and his generation are all oldies. You know what I mean? Moses' generation has long been gone at this point. So, the few people that were left to stand up for the weak and the innocent, they're long gone. They're long gone at this point. And now we're in a generation where it's every man for himself, pretty much. So, but their humanity was still intact. At least some of it. Because they didn't completely wipe everybody out, and they didn't destroy every religious center. Yes, they did do quite a bit of damage, but they still left some behind. And Yahweh sends his angel down to give them a piece of his mind. I'm assuming it's Michael. It's usually the guy that's always next to him, usually, or Gabriel, which in my opinion are Norta Marduk. That's my opinion. I'm allowed to have it, right? I didn't say it was a fact. I think Michael, just from the research I've done, and I am no scholar, I think Michael is most likely Ninorta, and Gabriel is most likely Marduk. If I had to guess, I could be wrong. But that's beside the point. We'll get into Sumerian stuff at another time. Right now, the Israelites are in what we call Bokim. I don't know where that is in modern day. I have no idea. But the angel comes and says, you guys didn't follow all the instructions correctly. Like, you left some people alive, you left their gods intact, their idols intact, and you weren't supposed to do that. And the Israelites were very sorry that they had, and they got really upset and started crying and grieving and begging for forgiveness and all this other stuff. And Yahweh's angel specifically told them that the people that they had left alive and the gods they left intact would specifically become traps and snares to them. So, at least that's what the Bible's saying. That's what the Bible's saying. Let's see. We're in Judges right now. Judges 2, verse 20. Therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel and said, because this nation has violated the covenant I ordained for their ancestors and has not listened to me, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died. I will use them to test Israel, to see whether they will keep the way of the Lord and walk in it as their ancestors did. Interesting, right? Now, it also says they also wanted to do this because none of these people actually got to experience the war and experience fighting. And Yahweh, instead of just letting them have peace or whatever, he wanted to make sure that they were well traumatized and primed for his instructions. So, basically, this is how it would work in the book of Judges, right? The Israelites would start to probably get upset and irritated, I would guess, about all of this. And they would start to follow the local gods and goddesses like Baal and Ashtoreth and Asherah, which are related to Yahweh, but that's for another time. But he would get mad about it. And, he would punish them. He would let them be enslaved by the locals, to teach them a lesson. Maybe a certain amount of years would go by, maybe a decade, and they would just have absolutely enough. They would be so miserable. They would cry out to Yahweh to save them. So Yahweh would then send a deliverer, which would also be a judge. Not like a judge in a courtroom, but like a leader, like a military commander or whatever, to lead them out of the slavery that they were in, that they found themselves in. And then that judge would rule over them and they would all be happy and thriving until the judge died. Then they would fall for the same tricks again. I mean, who knows? If Yahweh had been there the whole time, like, would they fall for these tricks and snares? Probably not. But you know what? It is what it is. Maybe by the time that the judge would die, they would have forgotten. I mean, it's an easy thing to assume. They seem to be very forgetful. But anyways, so then, Yahweh would get mad and he would, sell them into slavery again until they were on the brink of absolute misery. He would never do it before they got to that point. He would wait till they're absolute on the brink of desperation. They were groomed, they were primed, they were traumatized. Then he would send someone in. And he would do this like after how many generations? Okay, well, the first judge is Othniel, or something like that. The one after him was Ehud, and Ehud was interesting. They have this whole gross story about this fat king that had the Israelites enslaved, and he was this really fat king. And Ehud, who was a left-handed judge that the Lord raised up. I don't know if Ehud came out of a laboratory or if he came from one of the Israelites. Not totally clear, but Ehud came along and basically shoved a sword in this big fat king's gut where the handle of the sword went. I don't know why they felt the need to detail that. That's a little gross. But anywho, and by the time the servants realized it, Ehud was already long gone. And, gross, right? Then after Ehud dies, the Israelites do evil again, and then they're sold into slavery again, and then another judge named Shamgar came and saved Israel by killing 600 Philistines with an ox goad, and he too saved Israel. Judges 3, verse 31. And then after Shamgar, and after they were sold into slavery again, because they do evil again, they don't say specifically what evil they did, just that they did evil, and that after Ehud died, and that they had to go back into slavery. into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan. Now, this story is where we get our first lady. It's not really clear if she's supposed to be a judge or if she's just a prophet. But Deborah is a prophet. She has like the sight, or she's a psychic. You know, the Bible calls them prophets. Other people call them shamans. Other people call them psychics. But, you know, you get the point. She got visions and she saw the future and whatnot. And she had her own little place where she held court because, you know, she was a prophet. I don't think she was definitely, it doesn't say she was chosen by Yahweh to be a prophet. It just says that she was a prophet. So I'm assuming she was born that way. You know. But basically, they were all enslaved at this time. And, hold on, let me get to the actual verse. Hold up. Okay, so at this point, the Canaanites had the Israelites enslaved for about 20 years. So this was a significantly long stretch. And of course, they were so oppressed by the Philistines and the Canaanites. They cried out to Yahweh for help. And then Deborah was technically, I guess, the one who gave them the good news that the Israelites would win, but at the hands of a woman. She did mention that. Let me find the actual verse. Okay. Okay. Judges 4, verse 8 is where I'm beginning. Barak said to her, "If you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go." So he was the one who was supposed to deliver them, but he was scared. He wanted Deborah, the lady prophet, to come with him. She says, "Certainly I will go with you," said Deborah, "but because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours. For the Lord will deliver Sisera," which is the commander of the Canaanites, aka Philistines, "will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." And it's a pretty brutal story. You know, they fight, they reroute people. Sisera runs and goes into the tent of Jael, which is the wife of one of these people. And she tells him, "Come on, you can come and hide in my tent. You run from your army, that's fine. Come hide in my tent." And she covered him up. But she ended up nailing his head to the ground with a tent peg. So I'm assuming that's the woman Deborah meant. Pretty sick, actually, Jael. And in fact, and her name makes me wonder if she's actually a human, because it's usually whenever they end their names with L-E-L, it usually means it's one of, like, you know, Enlil's lackeys, but who knows? Enlil doesn't strike me as the type that would have a woman lackey, but I could be wrong. He did work with the Shera, so, you know, who knows? Whoever, you know, she is, but he does work with her. Even though that's written out of the canonical Bible and the forbidden parts of the Bible, you read that quite plainly. Anywho, moving on. And then, like, Judges 5 is like the Song of Deborah. It's a big long song where they're praising Yahweh and all this other stuff. We don't need to read it. I'm not going to read it. You can read it on your own time. Moving on to Judges 6, we get to the story of Gideon. And once again, the Israelites do evil in the sight of Yahweh. So he actually gives them to the Midianites. Because, you know, he's not hiding the fact that he plays both sides in all these conflicts. You know what I mean? Yeah, he says the Israelites are his, quote, chosen people. But he is playing both sides. He admits it several times. He did it back when they were in Egypt, and he's doing it now. You know, with the Canaanites, the Midianites, the Philistines, doing it again. Now, according to Judges 6, the Midianites were so evil and so oppressive to Israel that whenever the Israelites planted any kind of crops or whatever, the Midianites, the Amalekites, and all of them would invade and, like, destroy all their crops. And it even says in verse 4, all the way to Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. I mean, keeping in mind this is after they've already conquered the land and did pretty much the same thing to all of them. I'm sure the Midianites and the Amalekites and all of them feel a certain way about it. I mean, they just kind of charged in and took over everything. But, technically they were the foreigners, but moving on. Now enter Gideon. Gideon is... That's my cat, my bad. Gideon is threshing wheat in a wine press to keep it from the Midianites. And then the angel of the Lord appears to him and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." And Gideon kind of argues this point and says, "Pardon me, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." Then the Lord turned to him. Okay, this isn't the angel, this is the Lord apparently. And said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" Gideon says, "Pardon me, my Lord, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." So the Lord answered, said that he would be with him, and he will strike down the Midianites, leaving none alive. And Gideon's a little testy. He doesn't fully believe it, like that's the Lord just did. And he does a couple little tests, and to make sure that this is like the real deal, and he's like an actually like either God or the angel of God. And all these tests work. So then Gideon then has faith in him. It's weird. Gideon seems to be the only one who's allowed to have any kind of doubt. But whatever. You know what I mean? The Lord or the angel, whoever, plays along, plays these little games that Gideon has, and then, Gideon believes. Interestingly enough, you know what Gideon's actual name is? Jerub Baal. B-A-A-L. That's right. Jerub Baal. That's his name. That's his name. Doesn't that sound eerily familiar to what we've been learning about Epstein and all that? Who is it that they worship again? I'm sorry, Kitty, my cat. She's really whiny. Anyway, so I just thought that was interesting that his actual name was Jerub Baal. But, I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Maybe that's just a title. Maybe it has nothing to do with the ancient god or goddess or whatever. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, Gideon's father does have an altar to Baal, and Gideon's last name is Baal. So Yahweh is actually working with a bunch of Baal worshippers to defeat the Midianites and Amalekites. They're not even like Yahweh followers. They're Baal and Asherah worshippers, right? So why does Gideon and his family get a pass when no one else in the area does? Are they not Israelite? Are they not Israeli? Like, what is going on? Like, why... all of a sudden, up until this point, they're just slaughtering everybody. You know what I mean? That has to do with Baal or Asherah, except for when we get to Gideon's family. And Gideon apparently is Israeli. He said he's from the tribe of Manasseh, but yet his whole family worships Baal, but yet his is the family that Yahweh chose. Makes a lot of sense, right? Makes a lot of sense. Makes total sense. And we wonder why there seems to be this whole like cult group among Jewish folks, not all Jewish people, but among the elite class of Jewish folk who secretly worship Baal. It's like, geez, wonder where they got that from. Maybe because Yahweh encouraged it amongst the upper class. Anyway, that's just a theory. I don't have a way to prove it. But it's odd, no? It's odd that Yahweh would choose Gideon and his family when his last name is Baal. Like, they are clearly Baal worshippers. And why is Yahweh working with him? And if they're Baal worshippers, you know what that means. It's just... it's like right there in your face. Like, it's just right there in our faces. And rest assured, Judges gets a lot darker than this. If you think that that's not like weird or odd or a little confusing, you just wait. It gets darker and darker and darker, and it's all right in our faces. And I think this is a good time to actually talk about this theology, to actually talk about where it comes from, like, you know what I mean, like who. I just think it's important. I do. It's funny because it's like these rules only apply to some people. They don't apply to everybody. You know what I mean? They don't apply to everybody. It's clear that you can like worship Baal, sacrifice babies to Baal on the altar of Baal, and still be chosen by Yahweh. Anyway, it's disgusting. I'm sorry. It just irks the shit out of me that people even still fight about this crap. It's so clear to me what the heck is going on. But anywho, back to Judges. So now basically I'm going to keep it short and sweet because, I mean, if you've been to Sunday school, you pretty much know the story of Gideon. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. They had these trumpets, Gideon and his men, and when they blew them, when they had the Midianites like surrounded and blew them, it would cause the Midianites to fight amongst each other. Very strange, very interesting. And that's what happened. And then Gideon, basically pursued the leaders of Midian, killed them as he found them, like cut off their hands and whatnot, and did all this stuff, set the Israelites free. But then, as soon as Gideon died, the Bible says the Israelites began prostituting themselves once again to the Baals and the Asherahs. And it was strange because so did Gideon's family. But Gideon's family were allowed to. Don't use them as the example. You know what I mean? Don't use them as the example. And now remember, and Gideon had about 70 sons or something like that. And a little feud began amongst, them. Because even though Gideon said he didn't want him or his sons to rule over Israel, his sons didn't necessarily feel that way. And neither did the Israelites either, for that matter. Now, one of his sons was Abimelech. Abimelech, asked, people, would you rather 70 of his sons rule over you or just one? I mean, Well, I mean, they chose, the one because they thought, well, we're related to him, so obviously we want the one related to us to rule. I mean, I guess that was their reasoning for, agreeing to that. So, Abimelech wants to kill his brothers. And he does. He murders all 70 of them. I think, except for maybe one or two of them. Let me see. Yes, the youngest son of Gideon, aka Jerubbaal, escaped by hiding. Now, Yahweh didn't really like the fact that Abimelech killed 70 of Gideon's sons, even though he didn't stop it. He still didn't like it. And he stirred up animosity between Abimelech and the people he was ruling. So he only ruled 3 years. And, probably not a good idea back at that time to move against someone like Yahweh. But, at the time, gotta commend the bravery when you see it. Now, Abimelech, kind of went on this, rampage, this conquest and everything. And how he died is interesting. A woman from the tower dropped, something and cracked his skull. But he was still alive. And he wanted his men to kill him with a sword because he didn't want it to be said that he died by the hands of a woman. Even though that's interesting that it was added. But, yeah, so he kind of did die by the hands of a woman. Now, then we had some other judges of kind of somewhat small consequence, at least according to the Bible. We had Tola, who led the Israelites for over 20 years. Then we had Jair, who led them 22 years. And then we get to Japhath. Now, Japhath, we're going to talk about Japhath. We are going to talk about Japhath when we get back. But anyways, so yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And as you can see, the seeds of hatred were planted a long time ago. And I think now we're just dealing with the result of thousands of years of division implanted by something that's not even human. Obviously, this is not an all-loving, all-powerful God. They wouldn't have done this. Like, how can you actually sit there and act like one group of people is better than another? That one group of people, even though they had their own home. I mean, just really think about this for a minute. Where did these Israelites come from, right? They're the descendants of Abraham, right? I mean, technically Jacob, but you could say Abraham too. Abraham started this line, right? Where did Abraham come from? He was Sumerian. He came from Ur. He came from Ur. And Yahweh separated him from his people. Separated him. Told him he was better than everybody. Said he was going to, appeal to his ego and his primitive mind. No one was there to stop Yahweh from doing all this. Then he just groomed this whole generation of slaves. I mean, this whole group of people, many generations, but like groomed them generation after generation to be his slaves. And in my mind, those are the same people who run the world today. The people who are technically this cult of Baal. Why do you think that Gideon's last name, or his real name was Jerubbaal? Jerubbaal. Because Baal worked with Yahweh. Sometimes Yahweh would pretend like they were enemies, but that's his son. It's Enlil and Anorta, obviously. And that's just my opinion, okay? I could be wrong about that, but I don't know. I don't think I am. I don't think I am wrong about that. I think it's the same ones. I think they're still alive today, doing the same things. I think that's what's happening right now. And I think that's who Bibi Netanyahu is beholden to. I don't know if he made a deal with them. Maybe he's being forced to do it. I don't know. But, like, I just know that if humans are not capable of such destruction and to revel in it, like I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't think it's natural for humans to do that. Maybe that's the better thing to say. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying I don't think it's natural for them to. I think they've been groomed to celebrate this. My opinion. I mean, psychology says we're susceptible to suggestion. So, you know what I mean? If someone more intelligent than us is to come down and, like, manipulate us, who's to stop them? Who's going to stop them? And I think that's exactly what happened, and I think that's what's happening now. I'm allowed to have my opinion. I'm allowed to have my opinion. And I just wanted to say where I stand as far as all this goes. I'm against war. I think it's a waste of time. I don't think it helps anybody but the rich and elite and the powerful. And I think they want us so bad to fight with each other. They want U.S. against Iran and against Israel, against this person or that person, when really it's the same rich family running every country who is benefiting from it all at the end of the day. Normal, average people don't benefit from this, no matter what side they're on. It's the rich elite people who always benefit, always. And I think they're a desperate attempt to distract us from waking up, to keep us from waking up. And it'll probably work for a little while, but it's not going to stop people from waking up. And this is my fervent hope. I fervently hope that one of these days we're going to see on the news the soldiers for the U.S., the soldiers for Israel, and the soldiers for Iran just look around and be like, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Let's just not do this. Yeah, let's just not do this. And then turning against their leaders. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be refreshing? I hope that happens. I don't know if it'll happen. I hope it happens. I don't want there to be a war. I want the 99 percenters to realize the power we have and look up and get our leaders out of these positions. Get their hands off these nuclear weapons, these evil people, and realize that we can do that. We can get rid of them. We outnumber them. Like, it's ridiculous how much we outnumber them. It's not even funny. In fact, I'm a little confused as to why we're still listening to them. Maybe not enough people are awake yet, but we need to wake up quick, because this is another speculation opinion. What if we were already here once before? Think about something. What if we already had like an advanced society, internet, tools, electronics, but way better than what we have now? What if we were already there once before and we're already waking up? Think about something. The Younger Dryas, when that big flood came. If it was successful and it like eliminated like 99% of planet Earth and only a very small amount of people were left, they would have essentially had to start over from scratch. Because, like, just think about something. Like, normal people, like, if I was, like, the last person left on Earth, the last thing I would know how to do would get the internet back online or to reset. And you couldn't. It would all be destroyed. We would have to literally start over. Everything from scratch. And I think if we don't like wake up quick enough and get the elite out of their positions, that's essentially what they're going to have us do. Only they're going to start over with them. God, that's a scary thought, right? Jesus. And I hope I'm wrong about all that. I don't want to be right about all that. But it's getting uncomfortably clear that these people hate humanity. They mean what they say about depopulation. They mean what they say. And if we keep letting them, I think that's what they will end up doing. I hope not. I think that we have a good chance of waking up before that happens and getting them out of these positions of power. Just wish we'd hurry up and do it already. But anyways, that's just my opinion. I know I haven't really been that focused on today's Bible lesson. I apologize for that. I will go back through everything I read, make sure there wasn't anything important that I missed, because my mind is just occupied, and I really didn't want this war to happen. I think I speak for most people when I say that. We all know why. We all know that these people hate us so much. They hate life. They hate humanity. Like, is there anything even human left about war? Like, what is human about war? What is natural about it? I'm sick of people saying that it's just going to be part of life. No, that's the reptilians speaking. It doesn't have to be part of life. Other animals in nature who are less intelligent than us don't do this to each other all the time. There's got to be something to this manipulation thing. Like, I don't believe humans honestly want to destroy other humans. Not really. I believe they're capable of it, but I don't believe that deep down inside, humans want to harm humanity. I don't believe that. It doesn't even make sense. Doesn't even make sense. But anyways, I hope you all have a good day. I hope wherever you're at, you stay safe. Yeah, we need to wake up. Have a good day.